Welcome back. In this video, we're going to be talking about Origyn, and we have the CEO of Origyn with us today, Daniel HAUDENSCHILD, here to answer some questions you guys have had about the project and also explain the value add that they're giving to the marketplace. Like I told you guys before, we're only going to be talking about projects that are continuing to operate business as usual despite the market, and that's an indicator for quality projects for the future. Daniel, welcome.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Can you tell me what is Origyn and just break it down for people that do not know?
Yeah, it's actually a really boring project, right? We just make certificates, but we make really good certificates. We make certificates of authenticity, and we guarantee them worldwide. So if we say it's authentic and it turns out not to be, we pay, and that's what we do. Now we do that without going bankrupt because of the technology that we use, and that's where the cool stuff comes in. So we use microstructure traceability, computer vision, artificial intelligence, computer learning, and probably one of the most powerful decentralized infrastructures ever built, to make sure that our certificates can hold the guarantee.
What is the background of Origyn?
Yeah, so I was born in Switzerland. My parents moved to Boston when I was a wee child of 6 months old, and I grew up in Boston. But I left shortly after university. I was in Africa for 2 years, and then I got my master's degree. Started as a junior consultant at Ernst & Young, and got sort of transported all around the world working with one of the big four. In global financial services, so working with Morgan Stanley and Deutsche Bank and Barclays, and 10 years in London, Singapore, Philippines, Saudi, Hong Kong, and a bunch of other places. And then kind of moved back to Switzerland as a partner in EY in 2014, moved into the crypto valley, where I still live, and I was absolutely transfixed. So seeing the mess of global financial services and seeing how much of our global financial infrastructure runs on Microsoft Excel, I saw the beauty and the clarity of the Bitcoin blockchain, and I was just in love. I was transfixed. I knew it's the future, and I had to start to do everything I could to work in it. Quickly realized that working in a big four audit firm is probably not the best place to realize my ambitions in blockchain. So I left. I got the opportunity to start Swisscom blockchain with a local telco here, and we did hardware secure modules for banking infrastructure, as well as some other things in traceability using Hyperledger and some other blockchains. And then I quickly got into the sort of the more nitty gritty stuff. I was working on a DEX between Ethereum and Bitcoin, doing OTC trading, and then I started talking to the guys at Definity, and a while back, before their listing, before their launch, and they were like, well, we've got this project called Origyn, and we could really use some help in it. And then the closer I got to it, the more sort of I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with what they were running after. I felt the way they structured it as a Swiss foundation. It had really kind of all of the things that were able to captivate me and bring me in.
So looking at Origyn, how does Origyn differ from other companies? Like before, I know back in the day when I first got into crypto, there was a company called Seal Network who's using the chips to put into Louis Vuitton bags to verify this authenticity and verify ownership. How does Origyn differ from these other companies?
Yeah, so the main advantage is that we don't have to insert anything anywhere, which is nor do we have to like scratch a barcode on the bag or create like a proxy. You get a credit card with the QR code on it, and it's supposed to represent your watch. But we've seen stacks of fatherless or watchless credit card blockchain certificates, and they are either counterfeit themselves or lose their ownership and link to the watch. And that's something that with the what we call, it's not like but it's biometric identity for luxury goods, that can't happen anymore. And the way that we do it is it's kind of like the culmination of three different things. And we're not going to be the only one in this space, but we do have a clear advantage right now. So it's this next generation of blockchain architecture, where you don't have to worry about transaction size or smart contract size. That's available with Dfinity ICP. It's the speed, through which, these cameras here, on the iPhone 13 with a, image stabilization and LiDAR, they've been advancing almost like Moore's law in storage. The speed with which they're getting better is just now getting to a point where you can do some of this identification. And then I think that the kind of cusp of the Web3 application, where people are getting ready to store value on wallets and understand what it means to do that. Those three things coming together has enabled Origyn to do what it wants to do, what it can. And we've been working on that, anticipating this time, using robotic stabilization with iPhone 12 and iPhone 11, because we knew it would come to a point. But it's now really that it's coming to fruition, and I think that puts us in the lead. We're not going to be the only one, and this is going to be ubiquitous soon. But we certainly have an advantage now.
What is the difference between Origyn's blockchain and other blockchain technologies? What's kind of that big difference between the two?
Yeah, so Dfinity's internet computer is really a next generation tool. It has, a smart contract capacity, I think, of 8 gigabytes per smart contract. We call them canisters. We can natively control, so you could like literally store the entire Ethereum blockchain, code into one of the canisters. We can natively control. We can natively control Bitcoin transactions and Bitcoin wallets from canisters. So when you talk about truly decentralized technology, some 14-year-old kid can write a swap engine and set it free, and nothing can stop it, right? We can stream 4K video from on-chain resources, right? So that kind of opens up, if you look at, and this is where Origyn really comes to power. Origyn is there to protect originators. If you just have to look into the music industry a little bit to understand, that the artists really don't get much from a relationship with Spotify, and the many people producing very creative stuff that are getting pennies on what they should be earning. Now, if you can imagine a place where you could create content and you could stream it directly to your fan base, and determine the earning potential for and what the fee potential for their listening to your music without having people gleam everything off the top, then that kind of starts to uncover where we're trying to get to with Origyn.
Could Origyn extend to Soulbound NFTs?
Yeah, I love, so that is probably, when we say we're scratching the surface of NFTs, the Soulbound stuff is really where that scarcity comes from. I was at NFT LA a few weeks back, and it was cool to see, that where the Bored Apes and the guys behind some of these, really popular, what they're buying in talent right now is actually in the Unreal Engine 5 space. And what they're thinking about is the experience that happens between metaverses, right? So you walked out of your, European Football League metaverse where you were watching pitch side, and you have the Ronaldo shirt on because you earned it through the collections that you got, and on the other side, you've got GTA 6, and somebody's just done robbing liquor stores, and he's got his tats, and he's come now. But you're waiting for the next game to start, or you're waiting for the next experience. And in this between space, right? That's where the people are now programming in Unreal Engine 5, to create the lobby that works between metaverses. And then you need sort of this common construct that sits behind it that creates a scarcity backdrop, so that that your legendary kit or your skins or your tools and stuff like that are really legendary, and that there's only a certain amount of them. And what's the ultimate scarcity is actually if there's a physical digital object that comes behind it, because then there is only one, or there's only 100 of these real paintings, real handbags, real shoes by Off-White. Those are the kind of scarcities that people really treasure. And so for us to kind of embed one of these certificates in an in-game unlock or a loot box that then shares a secret with Origyn to say, this individual just can claim right now that Rolex. That's what we do right now with games on other chains like Binance Chain and stuff like that. So it's really cool, and that goes into ticketing, for sports events, stadium events, Formula One races, unlocking experiences in the future because of the proof of attendance and real world things that you've done to show that you're a fan and an enthusiast, which can be anything from, listening into the cockpit chatter, at the Formula One team, or flying with your favorite team to the quarterfinals because you were able to unlock that scarce collectible.
Talking about creators, how can creators tokenize ownership with Origyn?
Yeah, so we have what we call industry verticals. In the Origyn Constitution, there is a scarcity concept as well. We have 10 industry verticals, 4 of which are currently identified. That's art, luxury goods, collectibles, and digital media, and 6 of which need to pass through the governance process and the on-chain governance. But within those industry verticals, each one is run as a separate legal entity with 100% ownership structure up to the foundation. So luxury goods manages its own liability because watches are different from artwork, right? And artwork, art has its own legal entity, manages its own balance sheet and P&L, and so each of these industry verticals, have a structure through which they can underwrite their risk, and they can insure their certificates, and they can work. Now, within those, there's an ecosystem. So within art, there's 50 and only 50 nodes. And within luxury, there's 50 and only 50 nodes. And so these nodes, like you think of all of luxury, right? So you can count 50 watch brands, Audemars Piguet, Zenith, Rolex, but you can also, Hermes and Bulgari, and you can get into stones like De Beer and Le Graff, you can get the cars, you can even get luxury furniture. So it's clear that, there's a scarcity there. But the nodes are effectively the ones that authenticate the transaction in luxury goods. So, a Rolex saying this Rolex is real, well, that's something we certify. A watch box, who's the key in CPO, certified pre-owned, them saying it's real because they hire, 60 watchmakers. Okay, it's real. That's the certificate, and they're node staked in the ecosystem. So they're staked, in order to claim, do their claim, just like anybody authorizing transactions on a blockchain. So when it comes to digital media and art, it depends on what kind of creator you are. But that would be your first kind of port of call, is that we have these nodes. And part of being a node is being open to having creators and originators come to you with content and saying, I want to certify this stuff as original. And we're working with, the LA Museum of Contemporary Art. We're working with the universities and the artists, and the fresh artists, to get them into spaces where, they have access to nodes and they can certify their stuff. And it's almost like being part of the Screenwriters Guild. And, like as soon as you pay your $100 fee, if somebody steals your script, you can sue, and the whole Screenwriters Guild comes behind it. So it's kind of a similar concept, is that we really want to make sure that, the artists and the people coming up with the creative juices, they're not bought up by one rich gallery, 10 paintings for $1 million, and then each painting sells for $10 million a year later, and the artist is there with nothing, right? That's the crux of what we're trying to solve.
I didn't realize how big the counterfeit market was until I heard, AMA with one of the team members of Origyn. How can Origyn help solve that problem in the counterfeit industry and that whole, massive problem as a whole?
Yeah, it's, our value statement isn't show us any watch and we'll tell you if it's real or not. What we say is that if we've seen the watch before and we've certified it, then we've created this ultra high resolution image that we can use to identify it again. And we have the tools and methods that we can identify, and we can issue a guarantee, an insured guarantee, carried by lawyer, some of the Lloyds of London names, and that's the value prop, right? So of course, it's a self-policing kind of environment. If you wouldn't necessarily run against an 80 strong, kind of a data analytics company, and try to fool them, if you were going to do counterfeit watches. So it's actually a really kind of strong, sort of white knight kind of environment, because it's like, I want a certificate because I want people to know I have a legitimate watch, and I want to be able to sell it easily later on, even if I lose my box and my papers, right? So, but the fact that you're a believer in the certificate probably also means you're not going to file any fraudulent claims, right? So, it's kind of a healthy, thing that kind of, but I think the bigger kind of issue with counterfeit goods is the markets that aren't there yet because of the counterfeit phenomenon. So if you look at somebody like David Beckham, he's a huge star in China, and people crave his original memorabilia, and he hasn't found a way to consistently get it to market, without all the holograms and anything else you can put on it, in a way that it doesn't get counterfeited. And that's a market that doesn't exist because he's not going in there, because he's, because there's no tools. But now there is, right? And things like T-shirts and stuff like that, when you get to stitch count and like it's really, really, the bigger the object, the easier it is for us to identify. Watches are notoriously difficult because so many shiny surfaces and so many things. But having done watches, kind of like the rest of collectibles like shoes and used equipment with wear and tear, becomes very easy.
So how do OGY tokens work when it comes to using the technology? What does that look like with the utilization of OGY tokens on the network?
Yeah, so OGY is a utility token, and we're very close to releasing that on centralized exchanges, and we're already released on a decentralized exchange, and it's really the start. We've been sitting with quietly building for years now, and we knew from past experience that do and then talk, and don't talk and then don't do, because there's been too much of that in crypto, and so we've been quietly waiting to talk about this moment, and we're so happy that it's finally arrived. So the token is a key part of the utility that drives our certificates, and the utility that you have is that the internet computer is really like it's IPFS plus processing power. So it's decentralized file storage plus this massive computer, and you have to pay it to remember stuff. So just like Ethereum has gas to register the transaction, we have cycles, and the cycles represent computer cycles. So we use the Origyn token to buy the certificate's lifespan. It costs more if you have a more advanced certificate with live 4K streaming. It costs more if you have a rich narrative, physical objects, big pictures. It also costs more if the certificate has to live for 1,000 years or just an afternoon. And so the primary purpose and function and utility of the Origyn token is to pay for the internet computer to remember the fact that there is a certificate, and not to overwrite that space with other content, right? So it's kind of important, and that's the primary utility, lifespan. Second thing you can do with Origyn token certificate or Origyn tokens is vote in the governance certificate, in the governance of the platform itself, and everything that including future verticals and nodes and fees and everything that's in the token governance will be done with voting with the token.
Okay. When can we expect additional listings for OGY tokens? Is there anything you can let us know with that?
Yeah, so we're on Sonic, and that's kind of cool because Sonic is one of the first DEXs on the internet computer, and people have bought the internet computer, and there's a lot to talk about it, right? So, but people have bought into the concept of the ICP, and some of them are kind of sitting with thin lips. Looking at the token price, and they're kind of been waiting a little bit for this moment, because what's happening now is that the projects that have been building on the internet computer are starting to come to market, and we're the first with our own token that uses the same token canister, in the same ledger concept as ICP. So it's really the first time that two tokens of the same type on the Infinity or on the internet computer can work between each other, and this is the first start of value generation. For all those people who have been waiting patiently, this is where the value creation comes in, and so that's what's happening now in the next time. We're going to be announcing on Monday that we're listing on two exchanges, MEXC, so MEX Global, which is an Asia-based an exchange with about 6 million users, and BitTrue, which is a US-based exchange that also has about 5 million users. So we're on one DEX and two centralized exchanges. It's not Binance, it's not Coinbase, but there's a reason behind that, and it's mostly because we don't want our listing to be the zenith of the Origyn experience. And we want it, to be almost a background effect. We want people to talk about the protection we give to creators. We want people to talk about the value that our certificates bring, and not necessarily about the token price.
Can you tell us about anything about, the Origyn and Impossible Things and what that looks like and what's going on with Impossible Things and the NFTs?
Yeah, sure. When we work on Dfinity, which is really kind of a next generation of tool, we also realized that we had to kind of complete some parts of the infrastructure that weren't there. And one of them is the marketplace to trade NFTs with our certificates. And so we did this. We created Impossible Things and we spun it off. But we've got some really, really amazing things that are coming to that marketplace. And the passes are available now. If you go on to impossiblethings.com, you can register for a pass, and people who get the passes will be the first to be able to buy the drops. And some of the sports celebrities that are absolute legends globally, some of the NFTs that we have, I'm not going to mention any names because it kind of takes the punch, but you got to go and you got to see it for yourself. It's really kind of, this is where the value comes together. And we have a basketball legend that is really at the absolute top of everything. And we've got an NFT concept that's broken down into some pictures of him, in his childhood state. And as he first started to learn, and some have been retouched by artists, it's really, truly magical. And to get on that space, to get on Impossible Things, there's going to be drops, of purely digital media, as well as a whole bunch of other things. And that's really the marketplace, also where you can buy the fractionalized art that we do, as well as any of the collectibles and the digital media. So that's where it comes to life, right? So Origyn certificate's great, if you want to watch, but if you want to buy collectibles, you want to trade collectibles, then the place to see how we remove, trust from the equation of dealing safely, that's the Impossible Things marketplace. And so please check it out. And if you like it, get a pass and have a look at what's coming.
Hey guys, thank you for taking a look at that interview. Great project, great utility in solving a real problem. Links will be in below. Check them out on Twitter, check them on Telegram, as well as go on their website as well, because they are solving a real problem. Keep moving forward in everything that you do, and we'll see you soon.